So today I'll be reading from a book called In Good Hands. It's about trusting God, and it's from the Lubavitcher Rebbe perspective, and it's got many of his talks, but I want to read the introduction because I feel like a few parts of this have a lot of good information for all of us. So it says, groping for direction, because what is trust? This is an exploration, and then we'll do some journaling. So at glad and sunny times, it's clear as daylight that God's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me by still waters. He leads me by the hand, so to speak. But when confronted by long and gloomy hours, people sometimes feel alone. In this world, God seems to be hiding his face. And today, the further we proceed, the thicker is the darkness around us. Thus, it was in the course of the years, thousands of forlorn strugglers groping in the dark for the hand of the divine shepherd poured out their hearts to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the seventh Rebbe, who resided in Crown Heights, with his wife, whose birthday it was on Saturday, Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka. Face to face or in writing, with the request that he help them find their bearings. Indeed, browsing through the Rebbe's letters, a reader sometimes senses that he's listening to a confidential yechidus, an encounter of souls, yechid, like the oneness, between a chassid, or a pious one who's a seeker, pure and pious, a seeker of purity, a truth, trying to be a justice in the world, a realness in the world, a kindness in the world. A real love, real giving, who has been honest enough to bear his heart in the Rebbe's study and the Rebbe. The responses are candid but compassionate. Above all, the sampling of over 70 letters, the Rebbe empowers his correspondence with a rock-solid trust. Even at such times, they're in good hands. Some of the letters are simplistic, others erudite and philosophical, but all are beamed to their various recipients individually, for their minds are different from one another. In our days, as in days gone by, indeed, Yehoshua was appointed the leader of his generation because he was a man in whom there is spirit. In the words of Sifra, he was able to meet the spirit of every individual. Accordingly, in response to the individual question, how can I cultivate the attribute of trust? One correspondent is advised to say and ponder over the words of the above-quoted psalm, God's my shepherd, I'll not want. Another is urged to study the expositions of Shar HaBitachon, which is called the Gate of Trust, and another book is called Chovos HaLevaves, or the Ways of the Heart, and or the duties, really. While yet another is encouraged in quite a different direction. I hope you'll participate in the Farbrengens, which are the musical or, comfort gatherings together for spiritual awakening and connection. He wrote in Kfar Chabad for somebody from time to time, which heal and strengthen and raise the spirits of those who are downfallen and all those who are bruised, downfallen and bruised in the battle of good and evil inclinations, the battle of form over matter, and of spirituality over physicality. There's a footnote here. The spirit he met with others was often troubled. Accordingly, a number of letters speak of how a solid trust can calm turbulence, even if the problem at hand is not yet being visibly solved. For example, the Rebbe writes, and Rebbe means rabbi, or abundance from Rabbah, also acronym for the head of the children of Israel. So the head of the people, like someone who is able to be the head, someone else could be different part of the body. So he said, is God really in need of your worry as to how he's going to run your affairs and solve your problems? Or will he succeed in finding good solutions even without your worrying? Anyway, the war of form over matter, of spirituality over physicality. In this way, the replies meet the spirit of every individual, especially since many of them are one-to-one correspondence, one-to-one responses to the private doubts and quandaries that correspondents around the world shared with the Rebbe. Thus, in the absence of physical yechidus, or one-on-one, in person, the letters are made an inexhaustible conduit of communication, instruction, and inspiration. They had to for the publication, there was a mammoth challenge, annotated selection from tens of thousands of letters. They have many volumes called Igros Kodesh, which is like the holy letters, and many subjects, many letters on the subject of bitachon. The parent series, despite its impressive strides, still has a long road ahead. Almost all the letters below from this date from 1950s and 60s, while the many thousands of letters written in the following 2 decades were virtually unrepresented. The modest sampling of the Rebbe's letters on Bitachon should be viewed as a prism to diffract a variety of colors from among a broad spectrum of approaches presented in the letters at large. In keeping with literary conventions of rabbinic circles, every mention of the Rebbe, the name of the Rebbe Rayatz, which is the previous Rebbe before him, he married the daughter of him. The Lubavitcher Rebbe that I referred to, Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, married the Rebbe's daughter, the previous Rebbe, the sixth one. And it's commonly they embellish reverential phrases like our master, mentor, and Rebbe. May his merit protect us. May the memory of the Holy Tzaddik be a blessing for the life of the world to come. And they're so prolific in the Holy Tongue even that there's clusters of acronyms, like instead of saying them all written out every time. So sometimes in this edition of this book, they have been telescoped to my revered father-in-law, the Rebbe of saintly memory, or the like. And sometimes every name is mentioned is followed by a cordial blessing of may he live, sheyichya. And since this impedes, it's been removed from the letters in the translation. And the salutations are also in the Holy Tongue have a lot of honorific appellations of esteem, like Harav HaChassid, Vasik v'Chassid, Ish Yirei Elokim, Navom Umaska v'Chulei. It's like a lot of they've been shortened into acronyms. If it would be translated, it would say the Rebbe, the Chassid, eminent and veteran, God-fearing Chassid, man of understanding and intelligence. So sometimes they're shortened to esteemed Chassid. And the Holy Tongue, or Lashon HaKodesh, considers it impolite to address a respected individual directly in the second person. So some languages deflect the frontal encounter by using plural, like, I was happy to hear his good news, instead of saying I was happy to hear your good news. So someone's in a third person. And the Rebbe often threw light on the subject of bitachon in the letters, placing one's trust in God. Also in public talks, also in Farbrengens, and later they've been annotated and published in Yiddish or English or Holy Language. Holy Language is Hebrew. And the theme is often that instead of passively waiting a supernatural intervention, we endeavor to create a natural conduit for the downward flow of divine blessings. And does this contradict with the concept of placing one's trust in God? And so if one's living is provided from above, in principle, how is it that working for a living doesn't compromise the reliance? Or if God's ultimate healer, how could the sages approve of consultation with doctors? And if we're expected down here, immortal, to provide a natural medium for required salvation, why was Joseph punished for placing his trust in, let's say, Paro's butlers, like our role models in the Bible? So sometimes the Rebbe says, God doesn't contradict the belief that everything's for the good. How when one has trust in the one on high, he also has trust in his fellow Jews, and how the familiar imprint in God we trust means that one regards God as his trustee. One hands everything over in his hands and relies on him in all his affairs. Another talk, the Rebbe's assurance, says that when a child is born, a sustenance is born together with him. Indeed, the birth of an additional child increases the sustenance of an entire household. How can a person honestly trust he'll be granted manifest good when he knows he's not sinless? The Rebbe offers a number of assurances for those who are deserving and for those who are perhaps less so. A final example of the recurring theme is the difference between hope, which is tikva, faith, and trust. Bitachon. First start, the word bitachon means certainty. And a remark of his revered father-in-law, the Rebbe once said, true in the former case of hope, or tikva, one hopes that things will be good, but it's not certain. Having trust, by contrast, means that it is certain about the subject. And then the Rebbe Rayatz cited a tradition where, a few more pages, that he heard from his father, the Rebbe Rashav. The previous Rebbe heard from his father, so the fifth Rebbe, that the Baal Shem Tov implanted faith in trust. It means that one is certain about one believes will actually materialize down here. And does that resemble hope? It says true bitachon is more than hope. A person who has trust believes that what he hopes will certainly eventuate. In fact, it's already present. The obstacle exists only in the person himself. The Rebbe Maharash, a previous Rebbe, which is the fourth, his name was Shmuel Schneerson, and spelled out in plain and the Rashab was the one right before was before the Rayatz was Rabbi Shalom Dober Schneerson. Anyway, they all have their names, right? So okay, Shmuel Schneerson, the fourth Lubavitch Rebbe, says people are not lacking in livelihood; they're lacking trust. Every individual is indeed provided with a livelihood. It's only by lacking trust that sometimes we turn off the tap. So it's saying that it's daunting it's mind-boggling to really in the variety of material and available versions to choose what to put in this book, for example. So on this topic, so it's like sometimes major scholarly stuff, sometimes a colorful passing allusion. It might be a background to a novel interpretation on, let's say, Rashi, who is a commentator on the 5 books of Moses original, and the choices have to be made. So in 1952, it says or the Hebrew year 571, the Jewish year 5712, there's mystical terminology about the levels of bitachon from the divine emanations, which are sfirot, or spheres of attributes. And then it says each level has a corresponding conceptual framework and the blueprint Kabbalistically of the cosmos, inside, outside. And so you can't summarize this. It's like, or exemplified in adroitly spliced excerpts. Omissions are sometimes, necessary, and personal reference, or pilpul, which is from Talmud, going in a thing inside of a thing, or a documented critique of recent learned publication. Sometimes it signifies a reference to a current event in Jewish world that was meaningful or to readers or listeners at the time, but it doesn't throw light on the theme, which is bitachon. So the talks that the Rebbe gave have been preserved in many ways, sometimes taped or transcripts, and even farbrengens that took place on Shabbos or Yom Tov, when ones don't tape or write, that are Jewish Shabbos or Yom Tov observers. Yom Tov means holy day. There's people called gifted listeners, chozrim. They review and write down the draft versions as hanachos. So during the preparation of talks and content structure, edited versions, interwoven, delivered in different occasions, and sometimes things are omitted or not. There's sources, cross-references. I mean, the Rebbe would sometimes have these versions that when they were submitted to him, he would enrich it with supplementary material, footnotes. And they even say like a muga is the text where the Rebbe edited and approved of it. So it includes some who are brilliant scholars in the listeners and the readers, and some have been made for beaming at specific audience, adapted, translated, and they're taken from 3 major series, which is Sichos HaKodesh, Toras Menachem, Hisvadayus, and Likutei Sichos. So summarized from the 3 main series, which have been used for this, and there's a director of the Sichos in English, Rabbi Yonah Aftzin, and their attractive presentation by Yosef Yitzchak Turner. So the person who wrote this is called Uri Kaplan, and he finishes by saying, this is the intro to the book, but I still think it was important for us. So, look at how it came down through all this like technical, academic, you'd think by this point, if there was somebody who said, I still have doubts, you'd catch it. That's why I'm sharing all this. Like, it's okay. So, so these lines are being written during critical days in Jewish history, especially clear to readers whose ears still echo with the Rebbe's cry, week after week, decade after decade, that we can't give territory to our enemies. It doesn't provide peace. It gives their appetite for more, greater, life-threatening concessions. So the Rebbe warned us of the security risk entailed by unabashed capitulation to terrorist threats and world opinion. And he said that, the Rebbe said that a national leader armed with trust, King Hezekiah, Chizkiyahu of Judah, rejected outright the blandishment of a seemingly generous peace offer that was attainable, but at a price, submission of the Assyrian invader and deportation from the land of Israel. And may he who heard the plea of Chizkiyahu in his era hear today the anguished plea of our idealistic brothers and sisters Jews who have been deported from their warm homes and flourishing yeshivas, or schools where you sit and learn, thriving farms in the Holy Land. May their eyes and ears and ours behold the coming of Mashiach soon. In the meantime, Jews in Eretz Yisrael and around the world echo the ancient entreaty, Chusa Hashem, Allah Mecha, God have pity on your people and do not let your heritage be an object of contempt for nations to rule over. I didn't read the whole Hebrew quote because it's not written here and I don't know it by heart, but that was the translation. For as the Rebbe teaches repeatedly throughout these letters, God transforms reality in response to a Jew's insistence, regardless of what his fleshly eyes may see, on trusting God's promises. And foremost among these is the divine promise of redemption. The long-awaited transformation of reality is the divine response to the Jews who insist on cultivating positive thinking, and the Rebbe uses the English word optimism. All right, so now we're going to do some journaling, and take your time, just write. So what I'm writing here is trusting that everything happened for the good. I'm writing, what did I get out of my relationships recently, with men specifically? And now I'm switching gears, I'm writing, what do I stand for? All right. That's it.